Lifted KC, we aim to reduce the stigma associated with mental health by promoting awareness of mental illness, its symptoms, and providing resources for those in need. We believe that through trust, relationships, understanding, service, and teamwork, transformation is possible. Support the Men Heal movement by donating to the Cash App handle LiftedKC.org. For more information about our organization, visit www.liftedkc.org. Lifted KC, transforming lives through hope and healing. So before we hop in and get officially started, how was the week this week? Oh, dang. Just mute the music as soon as I start talking.
I thought you needed a little, I thought you needed less background noise.
No. Ain't nobody saying nothing about that but you. Cue the music. Cue the light.
Hit the beat, DJ.
My bad. I got it.
Yeah. So how was the week this week? Talk to me.
Long.
Yeah.
But we're here.
Yeah.
We're here. That's all I can say. I'm thankful. I have no complaints.
Yeah.
I could complain, but it wouldn't get me nowhere, you know?
Okay.
It wouldn't get me nowhere. How's everybody mental though? Everybody good? I don't like the sound of that.
You know, we trying.
I am balanced. I feel like I got a little distress going on, but then I got some positive things going on. So it's balancing out for me right now.
That's awesome. But you got an exciting evening, though.
I do. I'm trying to get my mind together. Today's been a little doozy, but we're getting there.
Yeah. You gonna be there?
Yes.
For sure.
For some of the folks that are still down in the audience, I did send you guys an invite to speak. You can come to the stage. You can mute your mic or unmute your mic at your will. Everything is optional. But we great that you guys, very glad that you guys decided to join us tonight.
Yes.
GT, I see you down there. What's going on, boy?
And then we got Miss Tiara in the room.
Hey everybody, how y'all
Thanks
doing?
for joining, sis.
Yes.
I'm excited.
How you doing, Miss Pierre?
I'm good. How are you?
So does anybody got weekend plans? I know the topic is a little heavy, but anything to brighten your weekend? Anything y'all looking forward to?
Sleep.
Yes.
You just lazy.
Nah, I had a
No.
long week.
Them working them nights. I'm surprised you still functioning.
He be
For this,
brunching. Don't let him tell y'all that.
I do though. I ain't gonna cap. Sundays is probably my fun days, and that's if I decide to get out. See, because
Sunday fun day.
last weekend was the birthday, and I ain't do much. I really went out with my little brother. We went to go see Super Mario Brothers. I was excited. That was a dope movie, and it was just a very much so peaceful birthday. I'm glad I
Oh,
changed the narrative behind how I normally do my birthday. So it was, as I go through this growth of maturity, I know like certain things I don't like to do anymore.
Come on, Growth. I hope y'all heard my snap.
Hey,
Yes.
how's everybody doing? What up, Holly? I heard you earlier. You know, I'm on my second job. If everybody don't know, so I'm kind of tapping in while I'm at work. So I'll be in and out. But just wanted to
He
say
said
what's up to everybody.
he had to,
Yeah.
he
Appreciate
to the
you
bag.
joining.
Right on, GT. What's going on with you, boy?
Maintain and stand on the
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Heard that.
Well, we sending you good energy. Hopefully that second gig goes right.
Hey, I
So
appreciate that.
I'm saying hi to Miss Is it Genesia in our audience? She hasn't came up, but I just want to reach out and say hey to her.
yeah, right on.
I
Hi,
might have
sis.
mispronounced her name. Don't hold it against me.
Yeah, it's all in love. Get us right, and we'll come correct the next time. Thank you. Yeah. So it's about 6:15, and I think to be respectful of everyone who's joined so far, we can definitely get started and welcome and transition those in as they join. But before we get into the topic at hand, maybe some brief housekeeping rules. I'll try to pop these in the chat once the conversation gets going. But we just want to create a safe space for everyone to share their perspective, to share their story, so we can exchange notes and really learn how to process and how to support one another through grief. And so, in order to do so, what we do ask everyone is that you mute yourself if you're not the one speaking, if you are on stage but not speaking, and just please be mindful of the background sounds. It would be great if we can allow each person to complete their sentences in fullness, to complete their perspective without being cut off. So that's definitely the two biggest things. Obviously, we'll do our best to make sure that we can hear everyone. And if you're not on the stage and you have questions or topics that you want to discuss, please utilize our chat, or even let us know that you want to come onto the stage, and we'll definitely bring you on up here. So that's just some ground rules from my perspective. Moderators, do you want to add anything else in before we kind of kick things off with the topic at hand?
I just say respect everybody's story, everybody's experiences, everyone's feelings. We don't all process things the same way, so let's just be mindful to be open minded and respect the person that has the floor.
Agreed.
I concur. I concur.
Awesome, awesome. All right. Well, with that in mind, maybe I'll go ahead and kind of just start with what we're going to be discussing this evening, and that's grieving. Grief comes in all different shapes, forms, experiences, and sources. Obviously, the most common being death, loss of a loved one. But it doesn't have to be just death by way of someone no longer being on this earth. It can be the ending of relationships. It can be severances of bonds. It can be naturally drifting away from someone. There's all different sources and forms of grief. And we just wanted to open up the space in the conversation to talk about that on this evening. This topic comes from a movement that a few of us have started called the Blacked Out Couch. The purpose of that movement, if you're not aware of it, is really just to create these sorts of spaces for these conversations, but specifically in the Black community. Historically, we have not been open to having difficult conversations like this in a space of healthy healing. Sometimes when we do talk about these things, it's always in a more of a toxic, gotta be strong, can't be broken, can't show emotion sort of space and environment, which doesn't allow us to heal, to address, to feel. And so the Blacked Out Couch is a movement that's aiming towards tearing down those stigmas, founded by a few of us here, supported by many, and hoping that we're going to elevate the community together. So if you're not a part of our Facebook group, feel free to join that, share this movement with your friends, your loved ones, and those around you. But for this room tonight, I don't know if anyone wanted to start with the conversation about grieving, but while I have the mic, I'll go ahead and just say, my birthday was 14 days ago today. And something that I didn't talk about was how, about a month ago before that was the second anniversary of my father's passing. And I saw my mom, my uncles, my brothers, everybody kind of addressing it and talking about it and posting. And I could not bring myself to say anything on the matter. My birthday was very challenging for me because he would be the person that was super excited about it. And my husband, my partner, whose rib I belong to, he did a great job at really reminding me that, hey, we need to do something. Hey, we need to make sure that we're carving time out for you. But I really just wanted to sink into my dark place. I just wanted to be home, not around nobody, and just kind of to myself. So while I didn't ever acknowledge it openly as grief, I'm gonna acknowledge it around each of you all that I think in my own right it was grief for me. And so maybe we can start there. Someone kind of wants to answer what is grief, right? That's a question I'm posing to each of you all. What is grief, and how do you process?
Um, Grief, is you go through a deep sorrow. You lose if it in regards of a loved one and everything. It is just all just how you adapt to a lot of things. Like me personally, I deal with grief, and what people sometimes don't understand. We don't normally get over that person. We just learn to live with it and adjust with that. Just like prime example, my mother, and like you mentioned your father. My mother's birthday was the 9th of April, and anybody that knows me, my mother was my best friend. So that was, what I'm saying, when I'm at the age of 21, that took a lot out of me. I went through a phase to where I started questioning God's work, but what I'm saying, as I got older, what I'm saying, sometimes you have to put in perspective, like God needed her more than I needed her. So, and that's why I'm doing this, because what I'm saying, it's a lot of people, they could say they what I'm saying, we can go through the same thing. You lost your mother, but you can't never tell them how to grieve. You don't know what process to go through. That's why I used to dislike when people say, oh, I can only imagine it, because you don't know that type of impact that person had in your life while going through that process of grieving. So it's, what I'm saying, like I said, is it something that I personally got over? No, it's something I still live with. But I just learned to adjust to it. I learned to live with it. I learned to tell my stories to help others through their process of going through the same thing that I went through. So grief, like I said, is just a deep, deep sorrow, and it's something that we at times go through something that's very much so unexpected in our lifetime. So
That's real. Grief is sorrow. And, to respond back to you, I do just want to say my condolences to you. I don't care how many years ago it was, loss is loss. And like you said, the pain never really goes away. You just kind of learn how to breathe through, how to manage it. So my condolences to you on
I
that.
appreciate you. Peace and
Yeah,
blessings. I appreciate you.
of course, of course, of course. So maybe if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit, this time of year, what do you do? What do you typically do when you get heavy? How do you find yourself processing, whether it's
Music.
natural or unnatural? Mm.
Music, and I learned a new thing. Like I really got back a lot. Sometimes you know things that you dislike or things that make you happy. Things that you in your life you know that you have, that's a bad habit that you have to cut ties with. Music, and also as well as I'm a big movie watcher, series and everything. So just seeing other, what I'm saying, things like as far as creativity and everything, I build from that. So it's, you know, and if let's say if I go through a moment, what I'm saying, which I feel like it's okay. Sometimes you just want to be to yourself. Sometimes you just want to be seclusive from everything, and what I'm saying, it's just momentarily. What I'm saying, it's not like you trying to cut out the world for good. You just need that moment to yourself, and then you're back to normal. Like I said, I think the most with the situation is my little brother. My little brother lost his mother at the age of 12, so I try to comfort him as much as I can, because he didn't get that type of privilege as I did when I was coming up with my mother. So
I think I like the part where Z stated that it's okay to seclude yourself sometimes. I think a lot of times we need that alone time to process for ourselves because you got to think. Um, I'm thinking back to when my grandmother passed. It was 10 years ago, but I allowed myself to be there for everybody else that I didn't take the necessary time that I need. So now certain things are hitting me when I possibly should have allowed myself to grieve then, and it's making it a lot harder. So just learning that sometimes it's okay to shut the world out and deal with what you need to deal with, how you need to deal with, and don't let nobody tell you different. Don't stay secluded, but definitely be okay with taking the time that you need. Have a person that you trust and that you know close enough that you can reach out and be like, hey, I'm about to isolate, so that even if you can't pull yourself out, they can come get you, but they allow you that time to process what you need to process. So my biggest regret when my grandmother passed was not taking time to myself. Caused a lot of panic attacks, a lot of anger. I fell out with a lot of people just because I wasn't in a healthy space to understand what was happening to me. Just to add clarity on what I was stating, and I mean, I'm it's fine to disagree, but I merely mean if you're not in a place where you know how to self regulate and pull yourself out when you start going into that rabbit hole, then I think it's safe to make sure that you have a support system. If you believe that you are strong enough and you know your triggers and you know when it's time to get up and push on, then by any means, I mean, again, the way I handle things isn't necessarily for everybody to handle it that way. I just say if you don't know how, make sure you have the rope available for someone to pull you up. That's my piece.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, Miss Devon, I'm going to come back to you because I don't know if I necessarily heard your definition of grief, but I definitely want to get that out of your brain before you have to hop. But, a question that I want to pose to the group is going to be seclusion, right? I do want to drill down a little bit more on that because a lot of times when we say seclusion, it might mean, oh, just kind of cut yourself off, turn your phone off, be at home, kind of go into a hermit. But what I feel like I found is the emotional seclusion that is very popular in the Black community where we're not really okay and we're not talking about it, right? We're not bringing anyone else in on how we're feeling, but we're still going around and being around people as if we're not secluded. I think, my husband oftentimes calls it putting on a mask. So, what do we say about that? How do we feel about that sort of seclusion and how that connects with what Miss Devon said about, knowing that you have a support system, making sure that you are able to self regulate so that you don't slip into unhealthy behaviors?
I'm sorry. You just asking in general, or were you asking Devin
No, I'm
specifically?
asking in general, right? Like, I feel like we talked a lot about seclusion in terms of removing ourselves from people and taking the time we need. But now I'm asking more about the emotional seclusion, which I think is very common in the Black community, where we emotionally mask how we're really feeling and we don't let anyone in.
Yeah, I practice that a lot. I practice that even when I'm not, necessarily secluding myself from people, right? I think that I wear a lot of masks to get through the days, to not make others that I'm around uncomfortable, or project, what I may be feeling on the inside deep down. I try not to project that on others. So those are some of the reasons that I wear the mask. But I do think that it is. I agree with you. I think it is very common in the black community um, to wear those sort of masks, from an emotional standpoint, especially as it pertains to grief. But I think that if I had to try to assess it, um, I also think that is kind of forced upon us from a societal standpoint. I think that society already, whether you're black, white, or brown, I think that society kind of has this standard, this practice of how they deal with death as let's just continue to move on. Let's keep it moving. Let's get over it as quick as possible. Let's keep business running as usual. Society kind of, they'll give you a couple of days off from work, but society more or less kind of forces you to continue to move on. And you don't really have a lot of space or time to emotionally grieve. So you always, you find yourself just as a member of society kind of burying your grief and sticking your chest out, putting your head up, and trying to move on to the next day. I think for black folks in general, um, I think it's even more amplified for us, right? And the reason why I say that is because I feel like black people. I think that we deal with the loss of loved ones at a much different rate than a lot of our other peers from outside groups. I think that when you talk about just the whole concept of living in two different Americas, the whole concept of the urban culture that a lot of us come in up under. We deal with a lot of our elders. They never make it to be true elders, right? Um, we deal with black people dying at a young age, whether we're talking about kids or adults. We deal with a lot of death. There's a lot of homicide in our communities. We deal with a lot of death. And so I think it's even more amplified for us because we're grieving at a different rate than a lot of folks. And then at the same time, we still have to, put on that mask to bury what we're feeling truly emotionally, just for us to continue to be functioning members of society.
All right, all right. I appreciate that perspective. Miss Nico, I think I saw you about to unmute right before Hollyride was going to speak.
I was, hey everyone. Um, I actually was just gonna kind of touch on that, how you were saying the seclusion emotionally, basically that suffer in silence mentality. So we most definitely, um, like Holly was saying, society kind of forces us to kind of keep moving, keep going, just kind of get over and continue. So yes, we don't typically take enough time to process everything that we need to process. But in the meantime, we actually have to show this face, chin up, chest out. But I do also feel that healing actually looks like that as well. So sometimes it can be confusing. You If you process and if you are taking the time you need, the seclusion, the support. People heal differently. Some people need to do it alone. Some people need to do it in groups. Like however you heal, if you actually are actively working on healing, you can be dealing with all sorts of grief in any category, and you actually can still be okay. You don't have to be actually suffering in silence. You can actually be okay. Um, But also, with that being said, it's all ongoing. So I absolutely can feel okay and I can be progressing and doing all these great things. And then it sometimes shocks you when you find yourself like in a sunken place again. But it's okay. That's okay as well. So you just go through your process of healing and your coping skills and all those things and kind of and get yourself back together. So a lot of people kind of are really, really hard on themselves when they feel like, I thought I healed from that. I should not be grieving anymore. And if you open your mind and understand that, yeah, you actually are just fine. You will have to grieve something more than once. It'll be ongoing. Um, but yeah, just want to add that.
Thank you. Thank you. So I do think that response kind of goes towards a common theme that I'm hearing. I've heard grief being sorrow. I've heard it being through time and ongoing. Maybe someone who just joined us, if you want to answer the question, what is grief to you? Someone who hasn't spoke yet.
If I could, I just kind of wanted to elaborate on what Holly said and a little bit of what Nico said.
Go right ahead. Thank you.
No problem. So I do agree that most people in America they do not take any time to grieve. They go to the memorial service, they tell their stories about their person, but after that they don't go home and talk about it or open up about exactly how they feel about a death or the loss of a loved one. And most communities in America don't actually understand the rate of death in the Black community. Um, so for a lot of people in America, it's hard for them to understand because their people aren't dying at the same rate. So, and I also believe, though, in the process of healing is your time to be able to open up and speak about it. When you're in your process of healing, you should try and be in more of a mind state to be open with more people about what you're going through and what others may be going through around you. That was it. That was my.
I'll speak up now that I got a chance. It's hard to do that. It's hard to speak up and let people know because all you want to do is go into your corner and just be alone. You really don't want to speak up, even though you need that healing and you need that part of that grieving is to be able to get it out and not hold it in. Because my grandmother, she always taught me, if you feel an air, if you feel a balloon of air, and you keep putting air in it, eventually what it's gonna do, it's gonna bust. And so, we don't want people to get to the breaking point, but we also want to be able to help one another and help each other get through this. So it's a really fine line, and it's hard to walk that line, depending on the level of grief that someone may be dealing with. Personally, I deal with grief with the loss of my mother, and that was back in 2016. But I'm still learning how to grieve because every year is different for me. It just depends on, it really just depends on the level of stress that I'm dealing with at that particular time. Because, like everyone, there's always a point in time when you get so stressed out that you just want to talk to your mom or you want to talk to your dad. And when that lifeline is not there, it becomes very challenging within. Um, so I just want to jump in and say that it's not the easiest thing to do to just open up and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, just because of the simple fact that you want to go into your little corner and just be away and be alone. So I get it, but there's also I get the other side. And it's a real fine line to try to walk that line and still stay level headed.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. Because for me personally, I'm 44 now, right? And I mean, it took years before I was able to open up about some of the real things that I was, going through with even just the people around me. It took decades, man. I was well into my adulthood before I found the courage and the strength to even tell somebody close to me that I'm struggling emotionally. Especially just the urban community that we come from, and then just being black men. We taught to bury our emotions, not to cry, not to even have emotions. They tell you don't be in your feelings, and so you kind of develop this hardness around you, and so when you are dealing with things emotionally on the inside, I know for a lot of black men, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it is really challenging to even admit that to the next person, no matter who that next person is. And for me, it took years. And what we're doing now with the Blacked Out Couch and this movement, these sort of support groups. 10 years ago, I wouldn't even been willing to participate in something like this. So I do agree with GT from that aspect that it is very challenging for each individual to get to that point where you have the courage and the willingness to open up about what you're feeling on the inside. So I would want to get everybody else's feedback on that, as far as just acknowledging and speaking on some of those challenges.
Well, I would say, when you say these things, when people, just kind of talk about healing and, getting over it or whatever the case may be, it's not to say that it's easy. It's most definitely hard. It's most definitely challenging. You want to get to the bottom of why it's so hard. Like sometimes we think that it's going to be hard or it feels hard, but we actually didn't even try it out. And it's based on, like, I agree with you, Holly, like it's ingrained in us. Like, as far as a black man, for sure, but just look, strong black woman. You know what I'm saying? We supposed to be strong black women. We can't say that, we can't we tired, we can't take care of these kids that we made. We can't, like there's so much that we are supposed to be so strong about that we just say that it's hard before we actually tried it and experienced it being hard. So it's just hard in thought initially. However, if you are able to find spaces like this and support and things like that, and you actually try and test it out, you can, therapy as well, but just, different spaces and different people, and then you test it out, then you actually have something tangible that, okay, yeah, it actually was hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but, sometimes we say it's hard, but we're not always giving it the experience to know how hard it may be. And then once you try something and like you figure out the ins and outs and okay, that was hard, like that didn't work, or that made it worse, or that made it better, then you can make the necessary adjustments to continue to try and, open up or, get the support that you need that'll make it just a little bit easier to bear as you continue to try and, you know, grieve and heal, things like that.
Yeah, I would say for me, um, because you got grief and mourning. Like you mourn the loss of a loved one and you grieve after they die. Um, Now, of course, these words have their own definitions, but just speaking personally, mourning is like missing, of course, who the person was, but also missing who you was when they was around. And then grief is the process of trying to figure out and learning how to function and exist with this new version of yourself that no longer has this person to rely on. That's what grief means to me personally. That's my definition.
That's deep right there, man. I definitely connect with that. G Don, what's up, bro? How you feeling tonight?
Pretty good, man. Peace and bless. Peace and bless.
Appreciate you for joining, tapping in. Um, I'm gonna go back to what Nico was saying, because I don't necessarily disagree, but I also don't necessarily agree wholeheartedly. In terms of how we I do agree that there are things like opening up to somebody that we say is hard before we've tried it. But then there's also like the concept of trying it and it maybe not being as hard as you thought it was, but it is still hard. Or it's way harder than you even thought it was because of the reactions that you may get. Some of the energy that may follow behind opening up to somebody for the first time. Um, there's that aspect of if something doesn't go the way that it needed to for you emotionally, then now you become even more closed minded to opening up to the next person, to opening up to that person again. And I get it, right? I get the whole concept of yeah, but yeah, you just got to try it. Yeah, you just got to try it. But how? Right? I think we want to take spaces like this. We want to take the opportunity to speak on the whys, right? Like why do we feel it so hard? Me, I kind of gave an example, and Nico, she followed up with that example, just being black in general, and not having the space to say, hey, I can't do this right now, right? That's a why, right? And that's something that society puts on us, and some of that we project on each other, just in the terms that in the ways that we treat each other, because a lot of that stuff is embedded in us. But what are some of the other reasons, right? Like GT spoke on, depending on what type of stress you might, there's outside things that are going on in life, that now on top of you grieving or mourning, because Gdon, I love his definitions of those two things, and I think I do agree with that. But those are things that could be an ongoing process, just day to day, right? So it depends on what life throws at you. But what are some of the things, if we want to start to dig, into the root cause of why we feel like it's so hard? What do we do when we have tried it and it's still just as hard or even harder than we thought it might be? Because for a lot of us, everybody's journey moves at a different pace. And I think that all of us that are even just in this space right now, it speaks a lot about where we are in our process of understanding healing in that journey. Because it takes a lot of courage just to even be in spaces like this, no matter where you are in life, no matter what's stressing you out in life. But everybody's process doesn't move at the same pace. So how do we dig into it? How do we dig into those situations where people have tried it and still now they're even more closed minded to it?
Can I just say I've been working on that for 21 years. I feel like I've been in a state of mourning for 21 years. Excuse me. The problem is I lost my daughter. Um, and when I try to open up to people, it feels like people haven't been through what I've been through. So it's hard to take their support or their suggestions when they've never had to live through the exact thing that, you had to live through or I had to live through. So it's really hard to continue to open up to people when they want to know what's wrong and you want to talk to them about what's wrong, but they can't fully comprehend or understand where you're coming from.
I'll definitely just hop in here real quick and say my condolences to you, for that. That's definitely a loss like no other, and commend you for continuing through each day. In terms of the isolation, I guess for me personally, if I feel like people don't understand what I've been through, and I can definitely say I don't understand what you've been through, but for me personally, I think I get frustrated when people try to tell me what I should do. At least for me, support really looks like meet me where I am. Sometimes I just need you to be here, especially if it's someone, a loved one that I lost, right? There's different ways to grieve. You can grieve because of severance of relationships, losses of friendships. That's a different type of loss. But when someone has passed away, learning how to process and function through life without them, like Mr. G. Don was saying, that's a near impossible trait. And, I try at times to find ways to build new relationships, just to help fill that void a little bit. It can never truly be replaced, but sometimes I don't want the whole you should do this and that. Sometimes I just need you to be here with me.
I want
I
to
That's
chime
totally.
kind of
in real
go.
I'm
quick.
sorry.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
who's
Go ahead,
going?
sis. Go, sis.
Okay. I just want to chime in and say that I think one of the things that have worked for me, because sometimes we do put those expectations out there. And I'm okay with the person not understanding how I feel because it's my feelings. But one of the things that I have learned is to tell people how to love me when I'm unlovable, but I have to do it when I'm not in that state of mind. um they're not going to get me, because most of the time when I'm in them places, I don't get me. I can't vocalize what I need from somebody. I don't expect them to understand. Majority of the time, my pulling you in is really looking like I'm pushing you away. So before I get to that place, I try to sit down with people that I know I can trust again, because I think trust is the biggest thing in healing. You can't do it with people that you can't feel vulnerable with. So when you have those moments where today is a good day, those are the days that you probably need to pull somebody in and say, hey, I'm having a good day. Let's talk. Let me tell you what my bad days look like. Let me tell you what I need when I can't tell you what I need. Let me tell you what I'm feeling when I can't tell you what I'm feeling, so that you can better be able to assist me. Kind of like Princess said, some days we can't talk. We just need you to sit here. And you steady asking us questions is going to frustrate us and push you away, when in essence, we really just want you to sit down and shut up. So from my perspective, I try to teach people how to love me when I'm in a good place, so that when those bad places and those bad times come, they know how to respond.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that I do the exact same thing. Um, One of the, when me and my current girlfriend were starting to get serious, um, you know, as we were, having our talks about what's your family like and what's your favorite color and all of that, getting to know you stuff. Once we started getting serious, one of the conversations that I had with her was, of course, I let her know that I've dealt with depression in the past, and I'm still in therapy, just in order to make sure that I maintain myself and continue to grow and not, get sidetracked in such a way where I have a setback. But one of the conversations I had with her was, here are the signs of me looking like I'm in the might be sliding into depression. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's how I'm going to act. Here's some things you're going to see maybe around the house or in my mannerisms or what I do from day to day. Here's how I might even dress. Um, you know, just act, because as you now, that's a little bit easier to do on the other side or with at a certain point throughout your healing process. Because as you're healing and growing after whatever type of event, you can look back and a lot of I grew up Church of God in Christ Pentecostal. A lot of the times they said, "Oh, the enemy took this and the enemy took that and yada yada yada." Well, for me, those are just words and phrases where they just came up with whatever words and phrases that they had. So I know for me personally, depression took my self care away, and I fought to get that back. Depression took my independence away, and I fought to get that back. So when I start losing my grip on those things, that's like a sign for me that, okay, something might be going on. And so I also shared that with my loved ones and stuff like, hey, if you come around me and you see this and you see that, then check in on me, and I'm still gonna be me. I'm still gonna be the hard headed, slick mouth person, but just check in on me. So I think what Devin was saying about, teaching people who love you how to love you when you're going through those rough moments, I do think that is very, very important.
And I also agree. I think if I can chime in, I feel like a lot of times when we deal with grief, we have a trouble with accepting our emotions. Like we tried to hold so much back. Like if you in the mood of crying, let it out, because sometimes that's a cleansing for you. You know what I'm saying? As you know, these are ways when I lost my mother. These are ways that I had to build myself to be able to live and adjust to it. Like preserve the memories, you know what I'm saying? And and I do appreciate the people at times when they reach out to you and you know what I'm saying, they give you support. That's love. You know what I'm saying? It never goes unnoticed at all. But sometimes, like I said, seclusion, you know what I'm saying? I don't knock that. because sometimes you just don't, you try to avoid going into that dark space at times when I was very much so infamous for going into. So, and believe it or not, you know what I'm saying? My mother died December 9th, 2008. So even years before, you know what I'm saying, of course the pain, you know, we still go through the pain. It's something like I'm just now learning to accept everything. I'm just now learning to adjust everything because, like I said, a lot of it has to do with the people around my surroundings that it affect them as well. So I'm like I said, these are, you know what I'm saying, more so ways I'm learning to like cope with things, and hopefully it can help out others. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever, you know what I'm saying. When you guys say you lost a child, you lost a brother, you lost a mother, I'm not gonna, I can't relate to how you're feeling. Only thing I can do is be there for you, and I'll be wanting the same thing mutually. You know what I'm saying? Be understanding, like you don't know what I'm going through at times. And I think a lot of times the people lack that knowledge of the definition behind grief.
I feel like I got slapped in the face about three, four, five times with wisdom.
Yeah, that was a lot of that was empowering. Just I'm gonna play the dares to be different again. So, because what Devin and G said in terms of you know teaching those around you, what to expect when you're in not so good of a place. What happens when you are doing those things and those people don't take heed. When you find yourself repeating yourself, what happens in those moments? How do you deal with that?
But then at that point in time, it's time to assess them.
But
Um,
but every you saying at what point in time? Because if you have to if it's something that maybe has happened once or twice, or you saying there's a certain number of times, at what point, right? Because that can happen, for somebody with somebody close to you, maybe just one time. And some people are zero tolerant, right? Like, I'm not going to repeat myself about this, right? So at what point do you mean it's time to assess?
sure. Now this is just me talking, but for me, I would say it would be a combination of multiple times because just again, just me talking, you got to give people grace. So if you was having a bad day one day and somebody who you love didn't notice, if you wasn't around them all day, or if you don't know every fiber of who they are, you don't know if they're really having a good day themselves or not. It might be having a mask on just like you got your mask.
Hmm.
Now, again, it also depends on the severity. Now, and how much should they know? So if we talking like just being as an example, we talking like a coworker, you and this coworker cool, you having a bad day, you coming to work, you kind of sulking around, and they don't notice it. Can you really blame that coworker? Now, if
Hmm.
they do, then okay, you can respect them a little more. Like, okay, this person sees me, really understands me. Maybe our friendship can be a little bit closer. Now, and if you got one of your homies who you call your day ones, your homeboys, yada yada, and y'all been knowing each other for maybe 5, 6, 10 years, and they don't catch it, then it's when it's time to maybe have that talk with them. Like, hey, if you catch me doing this, then I mean something going on. Check in on me. So once they're aware, then they are accountable. You can't hold somebody accountable for something they're not aware of. And now of course within reason. Now if your homeboy who you've been knowing for 10 years walk in on you masked and fully cracked and on the floor in pieces, and you crying, spazzing, whatever, and they don't attune to you at least in that level, then that person is just not capable. And so now you have to assess, okay, am I going to be friends with this person who's incapable? Or is this person capable, or are they just not capable with me? You kind of assess it from there. And so that's the reason why I say multiple times, and then again that last point I made about the severity. So if you are just maybe having just let's say 10 is the best day of your life, 1 is the worst day. If you're just having like a random 4 day because rent that came due, bills that came due, you had to pay taxes unexpectedly, and all this happened at once, and you just having like a 4 day, nothing traumatic happened, but just normal everyday life, and somebody doesn't really catch that, that's not so bad. But if you like, hey man, I'm just having a moment, somebody real important to me just passed, or this aspect of my life that I it has just automatically changed for out of nowhere. I just need your support, need some time. Or you make it apparent, even without verbalizing it, it's apparent because they are aware of what the change that's happened, and they still don't come in and check on you. Then it's like, okay, now I have to assess you. Now that I'm putting myself together, I need to assess, is the new me after I'm done with this grieving process, the me that I'm going to become after I'm done grieving, is that person going to be friends with you after this? Or am I going to have any interactions with you? Um, Now, I think Holly, you might be talking about stuff like spouses and stuff like that, which is a whole nother level. And I ain't married, so yeah, I'm gonna leave that alone.
No, I wasn't speaking on any particular relationship, right? What I really was speaking on was I was leading back up to then that takes that it's a domino effect, right? You get to the point where you have to assess the relationship. Not necessarily talking about cutting off or ending the relationship, but I'm assessing the relationship, and now I have to watch how much of myself I can reveal to this person. If I am having a bad day, you go back into that closed-minded space of I'm grieving or I'm mourning, and I don't feel comfortable expressing that to the next person, opening up to the next person about it. I was going for the domino effect. So I wasn't really speaking on any relationship in general. I'm speaking on this is day to day shit that happens, right? You can teach somebody how to what to expect, and for whatever reason, this one particular or two particular times they don't catch it, and now you are assessing. You go into that process that G Don spoke on, and now where do you go from that process? If this person is still around, you may not be as close to that person now. That's what that closed off space looks like. That's what I'm speaking on. I'm speaking on the domino effect and why it becomes something that is easier said than done.
I want to pose a question. If we can come back to the question, if Holly would stay with what he just stated. But one of the things that I heard Holly say, and we've described in this conversation, is wearing this mask or isolating ourselves or not being completely transparent with people. Um, I know we often like shy away from wearing a mask, but just listening to some things, is there ever a time where it is okay to wear a mask? Like I know Holly was saying, this is his day to day. He goes to work. So when you go to work, you have to be in that mode. You can't go in somber every day. So my question, if anybody wants to chime in, is there ever okay to wear a mask, and should it be defined as something different than wearing a mask? Because I think we also put ourselves in boxes when we get to labeling certain things that may not be appropriate for a label.
I think I'm gonna hop in real quick and answer that question and say yes. I do think that it is okay to wear masks. I might even go as far as to say I think it's necessary because part of just getting through life and carrying the load and persevering, right, is this concept of having self discipline to push through even when you don't feel like it. Now, I'm going to say all of that with the caveat of very important to be self aware and self in tune, because you need to be able to have places and spaces where you can kind of call in time out and take that mask off, and what's the popular saying, let your hair down. But I do think that it's okay to wear a mask, and I think it might even be necessary at times.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That was part of my routine with Darren to be different, right? I kept saying that as a caveat. Is that the closed space, the solitude, the not being transparent. Miss Devon, it's not really a label. I do like the label though, right? I like the label of the mask because that's what it feels like, right? It feels like there are times when I can take off this mask and I can tell you, look, I'm really fucked up. If I trust you in that space, my wife know it. It's times I take the mask completely off and she sees that more than anybody, right? But I define it as a mask because that's what it feels like. It feels like I have to put on some sort of protective layer in order to get through the days. Like she said, she thinks it's okay and necessary. I agree 1,000%. I think it's necessary. Um, maybe necessary more than it is okay, right? But I think it can be both of those things. It's just the way that I label it. If anybody else labels it as a mask, that's fine. Ms. Devon, if you take it to a vote, I won't label yours as a mask, but I'll continue to label mine, if that's fair.
Is definitely fair. I was just wondering because I mean, what I'm getting from this whole mental health world is we put labels on everything. And like we are all agreeing, sometimes it is okay not to be vulnerable, but does that necessarily mean that you're masking? So that was just me posing the question, devil's advocate, trying to get some thoughts provoking here. So don't take any offense to my question.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I see it as time and place. So you can most definitely, I kind of lean more towards time and place, but it, again, the whole mass thing, I think that's a good analogy of it to, say it's a mask. However, it's time and place. Loon, as Devin mentioned, if you're at work, that's not necessarily the time and place for you to be just completely out of it. And if you can't maintain in the place that you're at, then yeah, you would want to be able to try and take a moment. As you say, they might let you off a couple of days or, whatever the case may be, but it is time and place. I am actually going to a double funeral tomorrow. So most definitely been time and place these last, couple of weeks because I've had to go to work. I've had to have the same energy. I've had to be support for folks. I have people reporting to me. I've had to still do projects. I've had to still do all the things. And I lost my auntie and uncle in a house fire. And we're having a double funeral tomorrow. And I've never experienced that in my whole life. I mean, I've had a whole lot of grief in my life, but to walk into a funeral with two caskets tomorrow, we gonna see how that goes. But it's most definitely time and place.
I send my condolences to you and the family, sis.
Definitely
Condone.
same. Sending my condolences.
Condolences to you and your family.
Yes.
Crazy, crazy.
Thank you.
I think one of the things also we tend to try to compare losses, and this was, I mean, what Nico just said is it hit because we've all experienced grief, but relationships make it hit different. The the season of your life makes it hit different. Like in our community, it has been so impactful. It's been so frequent, excuse me, not impactful, it's been so frequent that we're seeing deaths. And I'm kind of in a season where I'm not going to say I'm numb to it, but it's not as emotionally taking a toll on me as it used to 2 or 3 years ago. Like I see it and I'm hurt, and part of me is like worried because it's like, is there going to be a major breakdown, or is this just a place of understanding death more? So how are you guys looking at um when you are constantly losing loved ones, whether it's family, friend, close, or whatever? How do you process through multiple um, deaths?
Um, I can probably chime in on that, Devin. Devin knows me personally. I've experienced death in large amount of numbers of my immediate family. I just buried two kids and my uncle within the last 3 weeks. So, because I experienced them in alarming numbers, I don't have the capacity to process one before another hits. So, like, I'm in a space where I don't know, how to grieve properly. I don't know how to process death because I can't fully, dive into the first one before another one hits. So, I think for some of us, we just, well, I can't speak for everybody, but for me, it's just I don't know how to process or grieve in a healthy way because of that.
I agree 1,000% with Miss Tierra. That was Tierra speaking, right?
Yes.
Yes, my condolences.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you know, I've dealt with a lot of different emotions, a lot of different things just mentally in life. Mental health is a very broad area. I think that grief is grieving is kind of a part of that. But for me, the concept of grieving and death is kind of the root and the foundation of everything that I deal with mentally and emotionally. I've been dealing with, I dealt with my first death 30 years ago, with losing my mom. And like Tierra said, you lose somebody else. 30 years is a long time. I've lost and seen and dealt with a lot of different deaths over the last 30 years since the first time I had to, really grieve somebody close to me. And I still don't know how to process the concept of death, right? That's the hardest thing for me to process mentally and emotionally. And I don't think that I'm ever gonna reach that point. I've made some progress. I can get more in depth with the conversations that I can have over some of my thoughts around death, the concept of life and death, but it's still not coming from a place of truly knowing how to process it.
I think a part of processing it is what's like literally happening right now. Just joining things like this, finding safe spaces, um, getting out the bed in the morning, getting dressed. It's all a part of processing. Sometimes I think we don't always give ourselves enough credit, but to have a loss, in your case, Holly, like 30 years ago, similar. I was 9 when my father passed away. I was 11 when my mother passed away. I moved in with my grandmother. Then she passed away when I was, what, 13 or 14. So I so relate to, I feel like my actual personality, my character, everything is rooted in grief and loss. Like I wouldn't even be this Nico. This Nico is the Nico based off of grief and loss. And it's just been many, many, many other deaths throughout, my life. But I do try to give myself credit for, making it to the next day, for, again, finding people like yourselves and getting in, in groups like these and just being able to talk and, have someone else who's dealt with similar things, for sure. But give yourself some credit for just making it this far, and that is a part of processing.
I want to just jump in real quick because I want to respectfully exit, but I don't want to do so without saying goodbye to everyone. First off, I know we were just kind of conversating. I want to introduce myself to those that don't know me. My name is Devaney Lease. I have a nonprofit in Kansas City that focuses on mental health with emphasis on men's mental health. And with me saying that, I want to commend the men that are on here, because as for the last 6 years, the work that I've been doing in the mental health community, there are almost very rare that men are present. So just to see the presence and to hear the input of you men, I commend you guys. No shade to my ladies, but we do this. We gather, we talk, we chat, we do it over wine, brunch, whatever. So I just wanted to first say thank you and commend the men that are on here. But I also just want to send my love, my condolences to those that are grieving, whether a day ago, tomorrow, a year ago, 30 years ago. Like Holly said in the beginning, grieving, which is the title, is because ing means ongoing. Like, this process never stops. The hurt never goes away. We're going to always love and miss our loved ones. We're going to experience new memories where we wish they were there. We're going to reminisce on memories that we wish we could repeat with them. And I just want to encourage everyone to continue to come to this space. Continue to follow if you're not already a part of the Blackout Couch. There are huge things that we're about to do within the podcast for men, women, and co-ed. Lifted KC is doing phenomenal things for the men in our community. So if you're not following those two entities, reach out to me, Holly, Princess, Nico. I see Lauren on. Reach out to any of us so that you guys can find a way to tap in and be able to utilize the resources that we are building for our community. Um, Again, I just want to say I love all of y'all. I pray that we all heal together, and I hope to see all of you guys on other platforms and back in this support group on our next session.
Right on. Appreciate you, Miss Devin. You know, I don't want to feel like I'm overbearing or speaking too much. But all of that just it kind of resonates with me though. Like, it is it's an ongoing process, and that's kind of the motivation behind spaces like these. Um, and that's kind of what I mean about the way that I process death. Like, it's every day I think I understand it maybe a little bit better. But at the same time, like, there's a steady ongoing sort of scary feeling, um, you know, about somebody close to me passing away or myself passing away. Knowing that tomorrow's not promised, right? We all understand that life principle that at any given time it could be any one of us. That's still difficult for me to process, right? That's difficult for me to process and truly come to an understanding to where I can handle it a little better. Like, before Devin got off, she was speaking about how lately, somebody passing away, she's been a little bit more numb or less emotional about it. Um, and that's never the case for me. As many times as I've dealt with it, I'm never more numb. I'm always very, very emotional about just the thought of death. It makes me emotional.
I think it's hard for me to build new relationships because of trying to touch back on what you were saying earlier, by trying to get people to understand in the past. Like, the first time you don't understand, I get it. You've never been through what I'm going through. You may never go through what I'm going through, so you can't actually comprehend the grief that I'm feeling, which makes it harder to connect to people in the future, because once is okay, but once it becomes a pattern, it gets frustrating. And once it gets frustrating, that's at my point in my state where I break off relationships, whether it be a friendship or a relationship or family, you know. And as far as wearing the masks, sometimes wearing the mask as it's labeled, when you change your emotional state so people don't see all the grief and sorrow, it can internally deep down change your emotional state for the time being. And for the time being, you're in a happier place.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for that.
Thank you guys for your platform.
Hell yeah, thank you. And actually, this has been a very informative, empowering conversation for me. I guess for those of us who are still here, I don't know if anyone's willing to answer this question, but a question that I have is, we talked quite a bit about teaching those who we love or teaching others around us how to love us. I have one of my longest lifetime friends on the line, and she, hit me up and told me that she won't be able to talk much because she's moving around with the kids. But she can definitely attest to, and my husband can even attest to, I'm not somebody who opens up in a vulnerable state where I tell other people when I'm not okay, let alone teaching others how to be there for me when I'm not okay. It's kind of sad to say, but a lot of the people that I'm very close with right now have just learned me by observing and just by picking up my energy. So maybe for the sake of me, if somebody can drop some wisdom about how do you teach other people how to love you and how to, be there for you. How do we even start the conversation? We at lunch and dinner and I'm like, hey, and by the way, when I'm not okay, do this. Like, how does that work?
I can chime in real quick. I haven't said, well, you said I'm dealing with the kids, but either way, so just with our dynamic, we flip flop conversations. We don't talk for a couple weeks and pick up like we've never dropped off. So I think that question isn't necessarily generalized. I believe that's a case by case basis because it's going to depend on your relationship with that person. So like with us, I can just hit you up like, hey, you know how so and so happened. That was one of those moments when I felt like this, and when I get in those moments, I just need you to do this. Or, if it's like someone you're not as close to, but they're like maybe a coworker or something, maybe just kind of ease into it. So, like someone mentioned earlier, if those people are in tune with you, they'll acknowledge it. So maybe in the time when, they acknowledge it later on, or if they bring it back up, then you can kind of just address it then, like, yeah, that was one of those days. And when I have those moments, I just need you to do this. So I do kind of believe that how to approach that depends on your relationship with that person.
Right on. Right on.
For me, like I can't even begin to have conversations like that if it's not somebody close to me. Um, and so it does depend on the relationship that you have with that person because there's people close to me that I don't trust well enough to even have those sort of conversations with. And then there are people close to me that I do trust with those sort of emotional um, guidelines, right? And I think it does, like Kiara just said, like I think it does depend on, just how close you are to that person. But for me, and this because we're partners. I'm just really open. Like I wear my sleeve on the outside if I really truly trust somebody. So it's good, bad, ugly, or otherwise. I try to wear my sleeves on the outside. And it's not even I may be in a very, very good mood when I open up that conversation, but I could also be triggered by trying to express the passion or the importance behind what I'm trying to express, right? So it could turn ugly, right? So I don't think that it's any easy way to have a conversation. Like I think it's just really about trust. At some point, I feel like I had gathered enough trust with certain people close to me where I felt like the conversations had to be had. whether they went well or not.
Concept of trust. That's a easy word to say, hard word to embody.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Um, but
I know
that's what
I'm
I
over here
really,
like trust. What's trust?
that's why I feel like, I keep posing those questions, just to get other people's point of view or best practices, and just to try to unpack it all, right? Because I think a lot of the way that we approach these things do come from um, societal upbringing and some different traditions, some different ways of thinking that we've started to move towards, dispelling, right? Like that wasn't really the way we should have been approaching this, that, and the other. I think that we kind of moving towards that as a community, and so I want to unpack it, right? Like I want to get to the bottom of what, because I can tell you, I gave the example earlier when I started, when I just talked about the aspect of being a black man. Like there's an example of some of the things that we do need to continue to dispel and break down and get rid of, and then maybe we can start to approach things like grieving and trusting the next person that's close to you, and we can start approaching those things in a different way if we can get to the root cause of why we even look at certain things a certain way. Because trust is a powerful thing, right? But why do we define trust like we do in our community? Because we the trust is a real big issue just in our community. Whether we're talking about on from a personal, friendship level, business wise, like there's a huge lack of trust, which is why we, lack so much. We lack unity in our community, and that starts with trust. So that's another example. Why do we look at trust like that in the ways that we do?
I agree. And with certain things, as far as the topic goes, I think a lot of times, when Prince has brought up the topic, how do you express someone that love? I set boundaries. I think a lot of people need to get to the point to where it's okay to set boundaries, especially when you're dealing with grief, because at times, it's like, for general, like I tell my friends, like, I'm just not feeling it, you know what I'm saying? Just don't force that. Don't force it on me, you know what I'm saying? Just let me have my moment. I'm gonna reach back out to you. I'm just going through some things right now at the moment. So in regards to that, you know what I'm saying, I think I'm big on setting particular boundaries. And then if I feel like if I'm capable of opening up to you, I'll tell you what's going on, you know what I'm saying, let you know or whatnot. But yeah, I think we gotta get to a better state of mind of basically just setting boundaries for ourselves.
Boundaries is a whole topic by itself. Come on now.
I think they kind of coincide too on it because like I think it's okay to set boundaries even with people that you trust, right? Like I think that setting boundaries is just as important as anything, and I think that that's related to the whole concept of how we have to assess the relationships around us, right? So I do think it's okay. I think it's okay sometimes to still be able to set boundaries and say, you know what, I don't trust this person to this effect to explain to them what I'm going through. Whether that's based on prior experiences or whatever. But yeah, I do agree with that. I think boundaries and trust go hand in hand, and I think you can still set boundaries with people that you do trust a whole lot.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's necessary, right? Like part of setting boundaries, even with people that you trust, is learning to trust yourself first and learning to create that space for yourself, right? Like learning to love yourself because people who love you they oftentimes need you, but just like you need yourself.
It's kind of a ratio thing when you put in your trust into other people and you see why it's been broken and why it's hard to trust people.
All right, that's what I'm freaking
There's
on.
a ratio of good and bad, and if there's more bad and I can't trust more people, it's hard to try and trust future people because it might take them years to show you why you can't trust them.
Yeah. Is that Miss Allie speaking?
Yes, sir, it was.
That was, you know, I wholeheartedly relate to you speaking about, the concept of bringing new relationships into your life because I can't, I'm beyond that point, right? Like I don't think that I can have new close intimate relationships. If you're not here now, then you're not gonna be here, right? I don't, relationships that I form that are new won't be those close, intimate relationships, with people that I truly can open up to. So I understand that, and that's a scary thought in itself, right?
No, yeah, no, that's true. Like, is that's the hardest part is the moving forward part when you tried to move forward so many times with so many different people that it's just like some people hit their breaking point of doing that.
Hmm.
And to speak on the grief and the deaths already this year, I told somebody just a couple of days ago, I've already been to so many funerals. I'm not going to no more funerals this summer. Like, people better act right.
That's another topic in itself, right? Like, funerals. Um, funerals are supposed to be about, paying your respect. But, you know, speaking as a person that's been to way more funerals than I can count, sometimes you don't want to be there, or you may not want to be there. And
No, I'll
and some
visit the
people,
gravesite. I said that as well. I'm not like I
yeah,
can't do any more viewings.
yeah,
But I'll go pay my respects and I'll say my goodbyes. But
yeah. No, I was just saying, like, there's times, there's been certain deaths that I've had close to me where I didn't feel like going to any of that because of the way that I was grieving it. And some people take that as disrespect, and I just wanted to speak on just my experience in that. Like I've had those certain funerals, um, you know, that I didn't want to be there at all, right? And I think that that's still okay. That's really the point that I was making. I think that that's still okay if you don't attend a funeral for whatever reason. That's just my opinion. If I don't know how some people are very strong. They feel very strongly about stuff like that, right? You don't miss certain people's funerals. So I just want to say I connect with that.
for certain folks, it is a respect thing and it's a respect level, and I understand that. But
Yeah,
yet, sometimes you grieve and you need to grieve on your own. Like you can't grieve outwardly. That's the time
yeah,
that I think sometimes I need my mask.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So just looking at the time and kind of the natural flow of the conversation, I guess I want to pose one more question to anyone who's willing to answer. And this one I struggle with for a number of reasons, but have anybody ever given any thought to any preparation you might have done or be doing for those around you on how to process when it's your time, when it's your time to go?
you know. I'll answer just because that's always something that's real heavy on my mind. But I don't know that's a that's something that many people can process. Like, how do you prepare others close to you for when they have to grieve you? But that is one of the things that's always heavy on my mind. Just even having that thought, because I mean, it's one or the other. You know, you either grieving somebody or somebody is grieving you, and that time is gonna come for all of us. So I don't really know the answer to the question, but I would be interested to see if anybody else has ever even thought about that.
That's pretty heavy. And I'm kind of agreeing with him. Like I honestly don't know. Like that would just be something like I don't know. That's something that really got me thinking. Like damn, it kind of left me speechless just on how to just really respond to that. That's a real heavy question right there.
Yeah,
I could probably chime in on this a little bit. Me and my husband talk about this a lot, and we talk about if something was to happen to one of us, how do we want each other to move on, or and that sort. And I always tell my husband, like, if something happens to me, I want you to grieve me, but not for long, and um, I want you to date. You know, I want you to, be in love again. And we talk about it in that sense. We don't talk about too much of like, um, I don't want you to really be devastated or nothing like that. But as far as like us in our marriage, we talk about I want him to move on. If something was to happen to me, I want him to grieve me for a short amount of time, but I still want him to know that there's somebody else out there that can love him, and that that he won't be doing me a disservice if he was to find someone else. And he says the same thing to me. I don't know if it's true, if that's really how he feels, but we talk about it in that sense.
and is that the only person that you've talked about, like in the event of your untimely death with, that you've had that sort of conversations with,
Yeah,
the husband, your
he's
last
the only person that I talk to, because he's the only person that I'm, comfortable with talking to, things like that, of that sort. I don't think I would be able to have that conversation with my siblings, or I don't even think I would be able to have that conversation with my kids. I'm just not in a place of comfortability where I could be able to do that right now in this moment.
Yeah, yeah, understood. Yeah, and this is for me, like it's just the thought, like that thought sort of haunts me. Um, and I don't, I'm like you. I don't know if I could have that conversation with anybody else other than my wife, conversation wise. But I have the thought about everybody around me, right? Like I don't have the desire, the willingness, the courage I think it takes to have those conversations with everybody around me, but the thoughts are still there. Like, I don't know how to like begin to have those sort of conversations about how to prepare for. So it's heavy. That is a very heavy one. That's one that's always on my mind.
Yeah, I'll hop in here, Miss Tierra. That's quite commendable that you even have those conversations with your husband, because I do not. I do not at all. I haven't even tried to brace it. I think part of it is because I just know him, right, and I know that if I even start trying to bring up a world or a universe where he's existing without me after we've been married, is quickly going to get shut down. So maybe I use that as a scapegoat, but that's part of it. I do have strong opinions about this specific question, because I think that I was fortunate, just kind of in how my father's passing went. I'll share this in this space because I do think it's a pretty powerful testimony. But my father was rushed to the hospital literally 7 days before he passed away. And, I was at the house before we had to call an ambulance, and it was almost as if he passed away in my arms. And I'm a very spiritual person. It was just crazy how the whole thing went. It's like I never wake up early. I'm not a morning person. And I, woke up out of my sleep at about 4:30 in the morning. Couldn't go back to sleep. So I went to Starbucks and got some breakfast for my mom, my dad, my brother, and went to their house. And my father was already eating his oatmeal. He loves to eat. And he reached out to me and said, you know, my real name is Ade Kemi. I do go by Princess. And he said, Ade Kemi, come here, let me pray for you. And the moment that I touched his hand, as soon as I touched his hand, he lost consciousness. And I caught him, I grabbed him, and he was not breathing. And I started praying for him. And again, just a very spiritual, faith-driven family. And he came back. He came back too. I was in the hospital with him all day that day. That night, he called me, or had my brother call me. My mom, my brother, my dad, and I, we would all have nightly family prayers where before we went to bed every night we would pray. And this specific night, and I have this recorded, if anybody does not believe me, this specific night, he says to my mom and my brother, I don't feel like if I didn't wake up today that you all would be ready. And I'm telling you right now, you need to get ready, because I'm not going to be here for long. You all are going to put me away where I need to be one day. You're going to expect me to come back, and I'm not going to come back. And you need to be ready. 7 days later, my mom wakes up to get in the shower. It's about 6:30, 6:40. My dad didn't wake her up to make his breakfast. Remember, a week ago it was 5:15. I'm at their house. He eating his oatmeal. He liked to eat. He didn't wake up, tell my mom to make breakfast. My mom's thinking, oh, thank God, I finally got a morning where I can kind of just have some time to myself. I'm gonna shower, I'm gonna clean up, I'm gonna do the dishes, I'll make his oatmeal before I leave for work. She showers, she get out the shower, she putting a lotion on, about to get dressed, but then she noticed that my father wasn't snoring. He was a snorer. So she goes to, check on him. And, first she thinking, oh, he just sleeping really well. Maybe his sleep apnea machine was working. She goes to shake him and wake him up. He ice cold. He's ice cold. I'll spare y'all the details from there, but my father lived his entire life giving us different parables. He was Nigerian, and just really trying to instill different principles, different ways on how to treat people, making sure that you bring your community with you, right? Like reinforcing the whole concept of being tribal, of really like not only being there for the fun and the laughs and the games, but like being there when someone don't even know they need you, type being there. That was my father. And so I do believe that throughout his entire life, he kind of instilled in those around him different life lessons that they needed, and kind of broke off pieces of himself to be in them. And I try to pay that forward. I try to do my best to support anybody who's close to me, even if it doesn't seem like that venture is going to be successful to the natural eye, right? I try to manifest my love and my faith and my optimism into those around me. So maybe no, I'm not having conversations about what people should do literally when I pass away. But I hope that by being an example of faith, a faith-driven woman, that those around me will have support systems, beliefs, and faith to be able to move on when my time comes. Well, basing on the vibe in the room, I think the mic got dropped, y'all. And with that being said, I definitely want to thank each and every one of y'all for joining us in this space today, and for believing in this movement, and for being some of the early ones to help us plant these seeds that we believe are going to grow and flourish, for fruitful healing flowers with those around us. And we definitely will be doing this again on a regular cadence, on a regular basis. I don't know if anyone here is based locally in Kansas City, but we will be having a meetup. Um, I believe it's 8 days from now, Saturday of next week. The information is all on Facebook, so check it out. If you're not in Kansas City, no, in St. Louis, we will this summer, this fall time frame, start having similar offerings there. We're just trying to get our bearings in order. And then, of course, there will be a podcast that will be launching on May 4th. So be on the lookout for that if you want to continue to stay tuned into this community that we're creating, multiple ways to tap in and multiple resources that we'll be providing. So before we go, I do think that it would be worthwhile just to have a moment of silence for the lost loved ones that we have, that we all have, just kind of a moment of silent prayer, and a moment of acknowledgement for us to just be here in solitude before we end for the evening.
Amen for that. Amen for that. Listen, I hope everybody is at least feeling good tonight. If you're not feeling so good, my thoughts and prayers to you. But I want everybody to have a safe weekend. And like Kimmy said, check back in with us. I appreciate everybody for tapping in, and it took a lot of courage just to come in, whether you speak or you listen. These spaces are safe spaces, and we want to continue to do things like this. So I thank everybody for coming out.
Thank you guys.
Peace and blessings to all y'all. Peace and blessings.
That's right. That's right. And I'll just end us with this quote: Be there for others, but never leave yourself behind. Peace, blessings, and healing for all. Have a good night, y'all.